There is an abundance of axis deer in Maui County. For more than a century, they have been an important food source for many residents, but their increasing numbers are having a devastating impact on agriculture, native forests, and the water supplies. What can be done to control overpopulation and lessen the impact of Hawaii's axis deer? Tonight's live broadcast and live stream of insights on PBS Hawaii start now.
Aloha and welcome to Insights on PBS Hawaii. I'm Yanji Denise. Axis deer were first brought to Hawaii in the 1860s as a gift to King Kamehameha V from Hong Kong. Originally brought to the island of Molokai, the deer have since been established on the islands of Lanai and Maui. Today, axis deer number in the tens of thousands on each of these islands, and their presence is definitely being felt. With no natural predators, the deer population continues to balloon, and they are having a devastating impact on agriculture, native forests, and watersheds. Their unchecked grazing has contributed to massive erosion and led to soil runoff contaminating streams and coastlines. For some in Maui County, the deer are an important food source, but hunters complain of access issues. So what needs to be done about the axis deer problem? We look forward to your participation in tonight's show. You can email us or call with your questions, and we also encourage you to get involved with the conversation happening right now on our Facebook page. Now to our guests. Troy Helmer was born in Alaska and moved to Maui in 1979. He's the president and founder of the nonprofit Maui Hunters and Sportsmen Club based in Makawao. He is an avid bow hunter and an advocate for providing access to more hunting lands on Maui. Jamie Woodburn is the president and, along with his wife, the co-founder of the Maui Olive Company. Founded in 2011, the company has orchards in Upper Kula and is the first farm to produce extra virgin olive oil in Hawaii. He runs the only commercial olive mill in the state. Jeff Bagshaw is the communications and outreach specialist for the DLNR Division of Forestry and Wildlife, working in the Maui Nui branch since 2014. He's been working in conservation on Maui for the last 34 years and previously worked for the National Park Service at Haleakala. And joining us via Zoom tonight is Yuki Sugimura. She represents Upcountry on the Maui County Council and is the leader of the Axis Deer Task Force that was formed in 2021. A graduate of Baldwin High School and UH Manoa, she is currently serving in her third term on the County Council. Thank you all for being here tonight. We do appreciate all of your perspective on this issue. Jeff, I want to start with you. We said tens of thousands right at the start, and we saw a little bit of that video, but we want to show some more because these populations are really quite enormous. How big are we talking about?
Well, the new numbers, the more accurate numbers that there's been a lot of tossing around about how many there are, but we've all pretty much settled on at least 60,000, possibly as high as 70,000. Some people will speculate more, but that's really what we can confirm. So a lot.
And let's talk about the impacts when we think about that many, these herds. How big are these herds and what kind of an impact do you see?
Well, the herds can vary in size. They do congregate at different times, and other times they split up. In their natural habitat, these are mostly female-dominated herds that get together during breeding seasons. But here in the islands, it seems to be a mix. So it's really about where the food availability of food is, and they move towards that. So,
I mean, I'm looking at this video right now. These are not small numbers.
That was taken on Molokai, and that's on the windward side, because I was on that helicopter ride and taking some of the still photos while Dan Dennison was taking the video footage.
And let's look at Maui as well, because I think we have video of Maui County. It's coming right up, I'm told. But when you see those populations running on those hillsides, this is just pretty incredible.
Maui.
Tell us about
Correct.
What we're seeing here.
That's on Maui, and that's just an everyday occurrence. When our crews are flying out to different remote areas, all you have to do is point the phone down and take footage, and you'll see that. That's in the central area.
That is pretty remarkable. Jamie, tell us about what kind of an impact these animals have had on your orchards.
The impact's been increasing over the last 4 or 5 years, and We're partially fenced. We're not totally fenced. So they have basically unrestricted access, and it's almost like it's sport for the deer. But they'll come in during a certain season and start rubbing on the trees, rub through the bark, rub down to the cambium wood, and in some cases actually just push the trees over. The other day we did a count. We have about 2,000 trees, and over 1,600 of them have been scraped severely. And it sets the tree back in terms of its production and its growth rate, and it's ultimately going to impair or negatively impact just the yield and harvest that we'll get per tree. But we've got to fence the orchard so we can sustain it. Otherwise, we'll lose it.
Yuki, we mentioned that task force right at the top that you are spearheading that was formed last year. What are the findings so far, and what are you hoping to achieve with this group?
So the goal of the task force is to control, manage, and to find resources, which is funding to help mitigate the problem. And that has been, the very beginning. That's been our mission and our goal. And so we put together a group of people. There's about 35 people who are part of the task force. I call it alphabet soup because we have federal, state, and county of all different, divisions. But to kind of talk about this, we have a hunting group, we have an economic development group, we have an ecological group, we have the legislative branch, and communications. And we're going into our fourth meeting, so we kind of just started. But I think everybody was very focused on this problem, and we all understand the seriousness. And so for us, we have gone after, in our different realms, funding sources that we could. The County of Maui has put out money, and in fact, tomorrow we have a council meeting to verify $1.5 million that Mayor Victorino put in as additional funding to help with exactly what Jamie Woodburn is talking about, fencing, to help mitigate the control of access deer. And then we have, more money that we put in. But it's this kind of, really aggressive steps forward that I think was needed. I heard from the other working groups that were formed in previous, from 2002, I think there were 3. And part of the problem was there wasn't funding. So we made sure that all the good ideas that we have funding so that we can help the farmers, help the ranchers to mitigate the control, and then march forward with legislation to see how we can actually do the economic development portion of being able to have, slaughterhouse and processing the meat and having the USDA, approval so that we can march forward. We're just trying to do the challenges.
Well, Troy, let's bring you in here as a hunter. Patrick from Kapahulu has a comment here, and we love your comments and questions, so do keep them coming. Patrick says, we need to cull the herd by about 2/3 because it's inhumane for the deer. Tell us about culling the herd. How easy or difficult are these animals to hunt? And once you've successfully killed one, then what?
They're really difficult to hunt, actually. They're high strung. They're very very nervous animals. So it's, to cull the herd, a normal person that hunts you only shoots 1 or 2 a day, depending if you're using a rifle, if you're using a bow, it could even be less. So, trying to cull the herd, it's ideally that's what we want to do. We need to probably eliminate 20,000 deer a year in order to keep the deer sustainable at a level where they're not increasing or decreasing. So that's a lot of animals to try to kill and to maintain and to butcher.
Right, and let's talk about that processing, because killing the deer is only step one. So
right, you got to kill the deer, then you have to butcher it. You got to bleed it out, and, you have to gut it, and you actually have to process the meat, bring it home, quarter it, have freezers and have a place to store it. Then you can make all kinds of stuff. Like personally, I make different kinds of stuff. I make smoked meat, we make jerky, we make sausage, and of course everybody's favorite is just ground burger. So ground burger you can use in everything. So it's very good, and it's super lean, and it's a really good sustainable resource that we don't want to see get wasted.
Okay. Jamie, I want to go back to you. What kind of mitigation measures other than the fencing have you put into place? Do you ever hunt them yourselves, or do you bring in hunters to try to help?
We've tried to bring in some hunters. we haven't gone through the legality of getting permits from DLNR for nighttime hunting, which is when they're most active. We haven't been very successful in getting people on site. I understand we could be hunting daytime, but the deer typically aren't out during the day. And so our biggest issue is if we can control or minimize access, then maybe we can start to pressure the deer. And some of the hunters that we've spoken with have said that once you start pressuring the deer, their behavior patterns will change and they'll go to other areas. And that's kind of the negative side of the fencing from our standpoint. We've got neighbors that are adjacent to the orchard, and the reality is once we put up our fence, those deer are going to go somewhere else. And so we've had discussions with our neighbors just to let them know that we are fencing, and there might be an increase in deer activity, but it's like Yuki was talking about earlier, it's much more than just fencing. It's a management, it's a balance. Talk about culling out 20,000. That's just to keep it at the level that it's at right now, which
Right.
could or could not be. I mean, from my standpoint, I'd say that's pretty high. I mean, I'd like to see those numbers drop dramatically, but a lot of issues.
Jeff, what do you think about that 20,000 number, and what would it take? How many are being killed right now on an annual basis, or hunted and culled, if you will? And what would it take to get to that 20,000?
The data we have from last year is that we were able to take about 10 to 12,000, so not even half. And 21,000 is the estimate of taking about 30%. Now we need to do that for at least 10 years. We could drop to 20% after that. The primary problem, as has been mentioned before, is that in their native habitat they have 9 different kinds of predators, including from lions and tigers and leopards and wolves to even pythons. In Hawaii, none. And the chief issue is that in their native habitat, 48% of all the firstborn years, they die within the first year. 35% in the second year. In Hawaii, 95% of all fawns survive. That's our problem, because we're not hunting the way predators would. So that number, maintaining, if we fall behind in a year, it just keeps blossoming. It just keeps growing. And that's why we see the explosive numbers.
Right, and exponential growth. Alice here says, how many deer are there on each island in Maui County? I know you gave us that sort of overall number, but what are we looking at island by island?
I'll have to dig through my notes here. I can get back to you, Alice.
Okay, Alice.
I have some notes.
We'll get back to you in a minute. I think Yuki actually says that she's got a number for us.
Good.
Yeah, I have some numbers, and maybe, Jeff, you can verify this, but yeah, for Maui, it's about 60 to 70,000. And for Molokai, the estimates that we heard is about 60,000. And Lanai is 27 to 35,000. And Lanai has a very good conservation division. And as you know, most of the island is owned by Mr. Ellison. So they have a lot more control over their island, which makes a big difference versus Maui. But these are the kind of numbers that we've been hearing. And, I'm glad to hear that we have a number to cull, because I think that's what everybody was looking for, as to where we need to go so that we can sustain this and manage it. Yeah.
Troy, I want to bring you in. This question from David in Haiku says, he's heard that there are not enough slaughterhouses on Maui. I don't know that there are any. Now do the access deer have to be sent to the mainland for processing? Is that true?
No, you can, but you're not allowed to process wild game at a USD inspected slaughterhouse. So you have to do it in your own house, your own backyard. You can't take it to somewhere else to slaughter because it's a wild animal.
So let's say you wanted to actually turn this into a business, right? Because you have plenty of stock. If you could figure out how to hunt them, as skittish as they are, is there money to be made in this? And could this be actually, something to drive the economy?
Yes, there is. And there's actually somebody that's doing it. Maui Nui is doing it right now. the person that's in charge, I don't want to mention his name, to me, he's doing a really, really good job. I just would like to say that, and that he's utilizing every bit of the deer, which nothing's getting wasted, and I give him kudos for that. I mean, there's literally nothing gets wasted. So seeing that, I just don't like seeing it get shot and left on the ground. I mean, that to me, that's just not right.
And
But-
what's the going rate for a pound of this meat, and who's buying it?
Well, you're not allowed to sell it. That Maui Venison does sell deer burger for $26 a pound, and some of the primer cuts go up to $45, $46 a pound. So it gets pretty expensive. Anybody else, we're not allowed to sell it. It's not legal to sell wild meat. Like me personally, I give it away to all my friends and a lot of people, and I like to give it away. The only other thing I wanted to bring up that was really interesting, that in 1959 there was only 9 deer brought to Maui. So this all started from 9 deer. So there were 6 does and 3 bucks. So you figure it went from 9 to 60,000 in 63 years. So it's 2022 now, so it's 63 years. That's a heck of a jump from 9 to 60,000.
It certainly is. So the question is then, why wasn't this addressed earlier if you have that kind of growth? From the state side, I'm just interested from the DLNR's perspective, why has it gotten so out of control?
Well, from the state side, all we can do is foster hunting, and we do that as in any way that we can. On Maui, one unique thing is that there is no bag limit, and you can hunt any time of the year. There's no season, and there's no limit, and that's been in place for decades. So our job is just to provide the ability to hunt on state lands. Now, we can't, unfortunately, control on other lands. We can try to help if we're asked by a landowner. But if I can just show a map briefly, because a lot of people will say, well, why doesn't the state do what you're seeing here? If you can see that on camera. The brown and the green areas, that's about 20% of the land on Maui. Only about 20%. The rest is private land. And the deer, try to play weatherman here, the deer are mostly in this region where the private land is. So the problem when people say, we need more access, we do have hunting, any of the brown areas are hunting areas that are for folks who've got a hunting license and a permit. But if it's on state land, it's kind of limited in what we can do to help.
What do you think would be the way to address some of that? Are you hoping that the task force perhaps could get some kind of waiver to have access? I guess you can't really go on private land no matter what.
Well, none of us want to live in a world where the government says we're going to dictate who has access to your land. So it's really one person at a time, or one parcel landowner at a time. As Yuki was saying, Lanai works, it's one landowner. That's pretty easy. On Maui, we have about 80,000 acres of hunting land. The deer are not necessarily on that land. We're working to add about 20,000 more acres. And because that's each parcel that we try to make an agreement with that landowner, because those are sensitive issues, we can't really say, okay, this landowner is ready. But stay tuned. We will try to add those as we can so that it improves access. So that's the limit of what we can do, is provide access and the means to hunt.
Troy, I see that you want to add something.
Yeah, I mean, I was trying to think of all this stuff too, and what the resolution of the whole problem is, so we could try to figure it out. And the only thing that I can even think of is all the landowners always say liability, liability, liability. That's all I hear. So we need to either change the liability laws, or we got to try to see if maybe we can have some kind of tax incentives for large landowners that allow hunters to go on their property. or as they do in the mainland, there's land vouchers or landowner tags, and the hunters, all the people that I've talked to are willing to pay a small fee to hunt the access deer. And even if it's just does only, because like Jeff was saying, we need to cull out the does more than the bucks. Everybody wants to shoot a trophy buck. That's ideally, you want to put the big buck on your wall, but it doesn't help, and it's insufficient for helping the population. So you actually need to kill between 4 and 5 does to every buck.
Wow. Yuki, how is the task force trying to navigate some of these access issues with the private landowners?
So I will tell you that as part of the 35 people that are part of the task force, we have representation from the large landowners, which are the ranches, they live, or it resides in what I call the breadbasket, which is my district. And I will say that I honestly have had this conversation with them, and they all are concerned, or many of them are concerned about liability, and and they do have hunters that hunt on their land, so it's not like they don't. But it is a list of hunters that they have relationships with over the years, it sounds like. And even to get on that list, there is, some give and take in terms of helping them on the ranch or different things. But they are really actively working together and trying to resolve this. But again, liability is a big concern because, as you can guess, that's going to be the deep pocket that people will go and sue them, even if there's a piece of paper that says, that we waive our rights to whatever, So there's legal things that are of big concerns, and I stand by them because they have a lot to lose, and government, we can't tell them that they need to open up their land.
And Jamie, I mean, you are a private landowner. You would be facing some of those liability issues if you did let strangers
I
on
would,
your property.
yeah. I wanted to ask Yuki about, as part of a comprehensive program that would manage the deer and the slaughterhouse and Department of Ag and Department of Health issues, are there people that are looking at trying to make that process easier so that if, let's say, a large ranch wanted to go in and diversify and actually begin to harvest deer from their property, it sounds like the slaughterhouse inspection and killing of the animal is a major obstacle.
Yeah, what about that?
It is a major obstacle, and we tried to work on it through this legislative session, but we're going to tweak it for the next, so we weren't successful. So we're not giving up on that. But slaughterhouses, there is the person that you mentioned earlier that has successfully been able to work on the deer problem, works with the ranches, has an ongoing group of people. And I recently talked to him and I said, "Oh, what are you doing?" And he said he was hiring butchers. And that's because he's got the system down. He has the USDA, his veterinary, everything that you need to do. He's figured out how to do it. And we probably need to sit down with him so we can learn from him. But yes, we are not going to give up and to figure out the system. We have a subcommittee on the task force for economic development, chaired by Pam Tumpop, who's our Maui Chamber of Commerce person. And she has all those connections with small businesses. And we're trying to figure out how we can, make this into a profitable business going forward. So those are one of our goals.
Jeff, I want to talk about where these deer are now moving, because we know that we are in a drought, and we understand that they're moving closer and closer to where people actually are. Let's take a look at some of those images, and if you could tell us, are there more interactions that you're seeing? Where are you seeing these deer actually going? This is actually Troy's video here, but we do understand that they are going into more residential areas as well. What can you tell us about that?
That's right. That looks like Central Maui. That's my guess. Yeah, Troy? Spoiler alert, Troy and I live 3 houses away from each other in Makara Ranch Acres. And, it used to be, and I've been there all the time I've been on Maui, and it used to be that you never saw or heard them. But now we hear them just above the subdivision every night. And you were telling me that they were roaming the neighborhood the other night, which is pretty dire news, because this is not just for me personally, but so when people talk about subsistence on Maui and food security, there's a lot of backyard gardeners like myself, and that's where my food comes from. So this really impacts everyone. So it is, as Troy was describing, you see them all the time now. I think there was over 170 accidents reported to Maui Police Department last year. That's just what was reported. But it used to be a rare sighting. Now it's a daily occurrence. We don't think about it if we see them driving, even in the daytime. So they really are everywhere. As drought continues, they'll move in. And as not just drought, but as their population grows, I wanted to get back to one thing Troy mentioned, which is how we hunt and what we hunt. And that's the other primary problem because we're not a whole range of predators. As humans, we tend to hunt only adults, and if we hunt only the males, then it exacerbates the problem. There are some estimates that say that our population of females may be 70%, and they can become pregnant within 6 months. When they're 6 months old, they can have their first fawn, and they can live for 10 years in reproductive years. So that's why we see an explosion in the population. So it's not just drought. As their numbers grow, they have to find new territory and new places to graze, and that's why they keep moving in.
There's a number of comments here on from Facebook and also from people calling in. And Pamela says, have we thought about caging and exterminating and then having better control over the population? What about, I know that in other animal population, and you have to forgive my ignorance because this could totally be wrong here, but what about birth control, feeding the animals birth control? That's something that's used in a lot of bird populations, for instance. I know a lot of condominiums right here on Oahu do that to keep the pigeons under control. Are there other ways that could be done other than hunting them in the more traditional sense?
These kind of ideas were raised with the first Maui Axis Deer Task Group back in 2002, and even doing bounties on them. And all of those are pretty ineffective, unfortunately. Hunting is really the main way. Now, we have other control tools, and as the state, on state lands or with the cooperation of a private landowner, we try to use any tool that they will allow. That does include remote sensor corrals where the animals are lured into a corral. You see it on a camera and it drops the doors and traps all those inside. One thing I wanted to promote, and here's where all hunters can help. One thing we really have to change, it's a paradigm shift and it's difficult, I know. As somebody who's even driving, and I won't hit a mongoose, I'll swerve for a mongoose, I know that as a hunter it's difficult, but we really have to get everyone, if anyone can remember a catchphrase, I would encourage people to hunt like a predator. Predators don't say, oh, there's a doe, I'm going to let it live so it can feed, can have a future generation. No, anything that moves. We really have to hunt each and every chance we get, any animal, whether it's a fawn or a doe or a buck. They really all have to be controlled that way because in nature that's what would happen. And that's on everyone.
Well, you called that a paradigm shift. I mean, I'm interested to get your perspective.
Does taste better. But like I said, everybody wants to mount that big buck on their wall. And I've killed hundreds of big bucks, and I've killed my fair share. And I'm to the point now where if I don't have something bigger on my wall already, if the animal that I'm going to shoot isn't bigger than something I already have, then I let it walk now, and I'm trying to shoot those. So I'd actually really encourage a lot of people to start shooting those. They do taste better. And the other thing is we do have a lot of accidents, like I was saying. A lot of cars are getting hit, so a lot of dead deer or a lot of deer that are wounded on the side of the road. Usually they call animal rescue, and Dennis usually calls me up and says, "Troy, we got a deer on the road, and we have to dispatch it." And I don't let anything waste as long as the animal's still alive, and we can pick it up. If any of the bruised meat goes to my dogs, and any of the good meat we still try to salvage. So even the deer that get hit by a car, as long as they're alive, I try to harvest them still.
Please go ahead.
I just wanted to add that, and Troy mentioned this as well earlier, that in other places in the world where axis deer have been an issue, where they were introduced in Australia, Argentina, parts of Texas, those places instituted a mandatory, you have to earn a buck. You have to hunt or kill at least 4 animals that are not a mature male before you get to take a buck with the antlers. We don't have any of that kind of regulation in place. We don't have that tight a control on it because in Hawaii we've gone that route. But that's really every hunter's just got to earn a buck. And so that's, if I could promote anything, I would say please develop that ethic. If you're a hunter, develop the ethic of you are going to make yourself responsible for earning a buck.
Jamie, I want to bring you back in and tell us a little bit. We saw the video of your trees, those images of your trees being damaged. What have you heard from other farmers about how their crops are impacted?
Other olive farmers are having the same issues. It's basically any trunk that they can get their horns onto to rub the velvet off. But what's happened now is that it's expanding to vegetable farmers and crop farmers, not just orchards, but people that have in-ground crops. And once that takes off in Kula and Lower Kula, there's going to be even a greater problem because a lot of these guys are just going to give up. You can't just be growing crops and then have one night a herd come in and just ruin your crop. The only thing that we found that they don't eat is kalo. They don't eat taro for some reason. But
true.
They eat everything else voraciously.
And you talked about fencing as one of the mechanisms you're using to protect your orchards, but how expensive is that? Is that realistic for farmers to then fence all the land that they have?
Not without assistance. I mean, deer fencing, whether it's 6 feet or 8 feet, can run between $25 to $30 a running foot of fence. We've got two 10-acre parcels, 20 acres. Could be $60,000 to $80,000 to fence that, and that's a whole lot of oil that we're not generating yet. So it's without government support, it's not going to happen. But we will lose our row crop farmers if they can't get assistance.
That sounds pretty dire. I also want to show some of the video of the impact this has on water runoff and the impact there. If we could roll that, and if you could tell us about what you're seeing, as this video I understand is from Molokai. What are we seeing here?
That's from Molokai. That's after the big storm in December. And I should add that we also saw that on Maui as well. If you're on the leeward side. But those are some of the fish ponds off of Molokai. The water is just chocolate brown. The problem there is that while you see green from the air, what you don't see in that video is that anything below the height of a deer, there is no vegetation. So the rain is going through the upper canopy and hitting bare soil, and that's what's washing into the ocean. So it's kind of that green canopy you see is kind of an illusion. And that's really along the coastline. If you look inward, there's not even a canopy. So it's a very changed landscape. But that's also true on Maui. What's important to note on that part of Molokai is that one estimation in the 1990s, there was a subsistence report for the governor. One report said that those fish ponds on Molokai alone could supply about 600,000 pounds of fish annually. So when people talk about subsistence, it's important to really remember that subsistence includes what comes from the ocean as well as the plants that people are growing on the land, and not just meat, but it's protein from other sources as well.
Yeah, I mean, that video is pretty stunning. Yuki, there's a number of suggestions here and ideas, and I just want to read a couple of them and get your feedback because people are trying to figure out what is sort of a legal way to get around some of these USDA barriers, if you will. Kahiki Nui Donna on Facebook says, Kahiki Nui homesteaders could use a slaughterhouse and our own inspectors. David in Pearl City wants to know, why can't the DLNR sell the deer meat to the public? And then there are a number of people asking here if there's any way, Kay Inaea has an innovative idea. Can they give the meat to the zoo? Are there any kind of workarounds here, short of having a USDA-sanctioned slaughterhouse on Maui, which seems like it would be pretty costly and sort of out of reach?
So we do have a slaughterhouse here that we need to probably upgrade and help that family with the Decoit slaughterhouse, which is private. But I think they need some help. I think last fiscal year we helped them with some improvements, but it may need to have some streamlining so that it can do more work with deer. Besides, just to let you know, we're trying to figure out how to do this. And we do have to follow the USDA requirements. And as I always tell people that unfortunately, when you feed people, you can't cut corners, right? And so we're trying to figure out how to do what can be done. And I know there's programs nationally like Feed the Homeless, but their state has changed their legislation to allow for some of this to happen. We are trying to work on it so that, hopefully next legislative session we'll have some success, but we were not able to do it this session. We're still trying.
Troy, I want to bring you in. Anthony says access and facilitating hunters are both important. Just to fly over from a neighbor island can cost $1,000 between the flight and the hotel and what have you. Just for a weekend, how many times a year can a person afford to do this? Access to at least camping on these lands would also help. How expensive is this to go out and actually hunt one of these animals?
Like he asked, we do have housing or the poli cabins you can rent up there, up in the actual hunting area. So there is a place that you could actually call and I don't have the numbers or anything offhand, but you could call and find out about renting the poli cabins, which is actually in Unit C and in our hunting area. And there's lots of animals up there. There's not that many deer as much up in Poli. There's more goats and pigs. But right now it's closed with that big storm that we just saw, with that video. It's been Poli's been closed, temporarily closed since December. Mm-hmm. And they're not projecting that it's going to be open this year at all because of waiting for grants, government money, stuff to fix the roads. So right now, Poli, which is our only place that we can actually hunt, is shut down right now. So it kind of makes it really hard for us, And another thing I wanted just to mention real quick is, when we were talking about the USD inspector, he has to be present when the animal's shot.
Well, that seems like an impossible bar to
That's why it's so hard, yeah. He needs to be present when the animal is shot, and the animal needs to be shot humanely, one shot, and put down completely, rendered unconscious when it's shot.
We want to, if the goal is $21,000 a year, somewhere in that area, and you have that kind of an impediment, how on earth do you ever make that goal?
Well, one of the hard things we have to accept is that the animals that we control and hunt aren't always just for meat, unfortunately. And that's another paradigm shift, that we're at a point in history where we just have to accept that there is no such thing as waste. In the natural world, there is no such thing as waste. The nutrients that created that animal can go back into the land. And so I understand that's really hard to accept, or it's a new shift for somebody who hunts, and that's where your food comes from. But we're at that point in time where we just got to ask all hunters. And by the way, Maui County has the second to smallest percentage of people who are registered and licensed to hunt. We've got 1.2%.
So how many hunters do you actually? About 2,000. 2,000 to get 20,000 a year. I mean, that's just not going to happen.
I was questioning for myself, what's that like? And that means that if each of those people takes at least 10 animals a year, and again, please take only 2 male out of those 10, the rest have to be females and younger ones. That could be about 750 pounds of meat per hunter. I was just curious, not being a meat eater myself, haven't hunted since I was 12 in Texas, but that's the average consumption of beef on Maui in Hawaii is about 50 pounds. So that's a lot to share with family and friends. But it gets back to that idea that we can't consume all of these animals. We just can't. We're going to have to let go of that idea and unfortunately say that we're now at a point where we're controlling the animals. Someone mentioned, one of the folks wrote in and said, why can't DLNR? You would actually, that question belongs more to Department of Agriculture. Our Department of Land and Natural Resources, we're not in the business of creating slaughterhouses or easing that process. Unfortunately, that's not our mandate.
So at this point, the objective is really just to lower the numbers, no matter,
Correct.
what happens to the animal is
Correct.
sort of a secondary concern. But even yet, you can't just kill an animal and leave it in the forest. I would imagine that would have its own impact. Or are you saying that that's what should be done?
Well, any hunter that goes out, and I've got, as I said, I'm not a hunter myself, but I know a lot of folks who do. And you don't take all of the animal anyway. When you butcher in the field and pack out what you can over rough terrain, you're not taking the entire carcass anyway. So that's already happening. What we're going to get to a point is that we'll have to have mass grave sites for these as we did on Molokai. And our staff over on Molokai were actually out there using, on private land, our backhoe to create ditches where these could just be buried, so it was not a nuisance and it was creating a safety hazard, a health hazard for folks. So I wanted to share one other tool we haven't highlighted. We've touched on fencing. A lot of folks have different strong opinions about fencing, but one analogy I've got to share is that if we don't have fencing, we can't contain this problem. It's like having a fire in an apartment building with no doors on the hallways. We have to partition the land up, and that's how we can conquer this, is one parcel at a time.
How does that strike you?
Yeah, fencing works. I mean, it works, but you need an 8-foot high fence. One thing that everybody thinks is deer don't, of all the years I've been hunting, deer don't like to jump. I mean, they run and they jump, of course, but more than ever, the deer go right through the fence.
Right,
I mean, they go through it. They go there, they get their head through there, they weasel their way through there, they do whatever, and they take that 4-inch hog wire and turn it into 12. But they go through fences more than they do over.
Or they can slide
What was
home.
your experience with the fencing and how effective that actually can be?
We've seen them go through fencing. We've seen them go through spaces that you don't think they can fit through. They'll go under the fence if it's not anchored securely to the ground. The fences have to be well built. Our property has hills that lead down to roadways, so they'd have to first climb the hill and then jump over the fence. Pretty difficult thing for them to do, but they're a growing nuisance and they're migratory. They're seasons depending on our rainfall. We're getting rain now, but we haven't had rain for a long time. So a lot of the deer were migrating up and down the mountain. We're right below Poli Poli State Park. So we're prime area for them. The fencing, it's a challenge for us. Just laying out the fence line, getting the route, clearing it, and then being able to afford it. It's a major obstacle for us.
I want to get an idea of just how big of an animal we're talking about. When you're killing these animals, how big are they? How much meat did they yield? And what are we talking about?
An average doe can go up to about 90 pounds. I mean, an average doe, and you get maybe 38 pounds of meat or so off of a doe. And some of the bucks can go as high as 250 pounds. And they can have up to, usually in Hawaii, about a 36-inch rack would be a really big set of horns that's 3 feet tall. So that's what's, they have the fuzz on there, the velvet, and that's what's Jamie's having a problem of. They have to get that velvet off, and so they go over there and rub their head up and down and just girdle his trees to the point where they die or they fall over.
He made the point that this started with 9 deer and now has ballooned to over 60,000. Gone unchecked, how big could this problem become?
Well, we don't want to know. We don't want to know. There's been a lot of, how many can we sustain? And there were some researchers that have cranked a lot of numbers. And a kind of arbitrary figure is we could sustain about 22,000 deer. If we're at 70,000 right now, that's too many. And some people will say, well, we could obviously sustain more because we're not seeing the starvation that we saw in Molokai. But we really don't want to get to that point because we can't go back into the ocean and take all the sediments that have covered the reef back out. We don't want to go and repair destroyed forests. So we don't really want to go to that. We don't want to find the endpoint about where their natural starvation would happen. That's just a nightmare scenario. So
Yuki,
if they're increasing by 30% annually, right now the deer are supposed to be increasing 30% annually. So if they're increasing and we're only taking out this much, or if we're not even getting to that, the numbers are still getting higher and higher. And they say that you can have as many as 200,000, and that's that would be catastrophic, basically.
That would be an ecological disaster.
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah.
Yuki, I see you wanting to weigh in over here.
Yeah, so just kind of the numbers that I've been hearing, I'm really it's nice to hear what Jeff is saying, because this problem is growing, and from what I understand, if we don't do anything, which happened in previous task force, they weren't able to fulfill their good ideas, and here we are today. So if we don't do anything, the numbers I've been hearing is like 125 to 150,000. And on Maui, we have 160,000 people, so we don't need as many deer as there are people. So this is a serious problem. I just want to talk about the Kula Egg Park, which is county. It's our egg park. We have farmers there. There's about 30 something lots. And we are, thanks to DLNR's help and with Kyle Yamashita, who put money, $2.8 million into this budget, last year's budget, and they're going to be installing a fence around there. And I will tell you, it is correct. Deer do not eat kalo for some reason. And I walked around, and the farmers there have decided they're not going to plant another crop because the deer came in the middle of the night and ate, whatever they were trying to raise, turmeric plants and just flowers. Everything is just gone to the ground. So it's a serious problem, and it's affecting our food sustainability. And it's something that I'm glad that, through the task force, I think we've kind of elevated the discussion so that we have all branches of government as well as different people in the community who are farmers and ranchers who are, taking steps forward. And it is a big problem. So I'm grateful. Yeah.
Jeff, there's a caller from Hawaii Island who says, instead of trying to bury the excess deer, why not incinerate the carcass?
That's a great question. I don't know. I don't know.
And then there are just a number of questions here, and I think that this actually might go to Yuki. Jim and Hilo says, concerns about USDA and food safety. What about using the meat for pet food? And here on the island of Kauai, there's an abundance of chickens and pigs. Then there's the deer on Maui. Could the animals be turned into pet food? That's from Sharon on Kauai. Is that an option to, not feed people, but feed pets?
Yes. So the successful person here on Maui, which we're referencing, and I don't know why we're not using his name, but he's Jake Muse, and his business that he's developed, and I think a lot of the ranchers and farmers, understand his success, but he does use the deer meat, and one of the products is for pet food, and he has established a very successful business. And I think that he works closely with the large ranch owners to, mitigate this. So we want to see more like that. And, I hope Troy will call me after this and maybe we can talk more, because I always thought that there's a need. I get calls from people who want to hunt, but there needs to be an organization, and I don't know how to get through the liability part. And I will not force a landowner to, take the hunter, but I wonder if there's something that we can do together so that we can take the skills that Troy has and, different situations and put them together, and maybe, we can help reach that 20,000, number a year.
Well, Troy, what
So-
about that? I mean, are there enough people, are there enough hunters, first of all? And even if not, just using more of the existing ones to go onto those private lands. This whole liability question is a serious one.
Yeah, and like I said, I touched on it before. I think if the large landowners start offering landowner tags, and maybe a couple $100 a deer. I know Jake. I try not to mention his name, but I mean I can. But he's doing an awesome job. He's killing a lot of deer, and he's actually bringing a lot of the deer numbers into check. However, a lot of the meat's getting sold to local restaurants and even shipped to the mainland. So it's not helping the local people in filling up their freezers. So that's the only downfall to his program that, we want to hunt too, yeah? And it's same with the large landowners. It's all who you know in order to get on the large landowners to, to be able to hunt. Unless you know someone like Jamie or some of the smaller farmers, well, they'll say, hey, we'll let you go hunt. But like I said, we're willing to pay money, and like a lot of people go to Lanai and hunt, and they pay thousands of dollars to be able to go over there for the weekend and go hunting. And there's people here that would pay on Maui as well. I mean, there is large game animals, people that are paying to go hunting. But like I said, if we don't start knocking those numbers back, it's going to be devastating. I mean, it's going to be really bad. And I'm willing to help for sure, but I can only shoot so much with my bow.
Yeah, and Jamie, what about that? What about allowing people onto your land? And I know that you said that you've invited hunters in the past, but I'm sure there are concerns about being sued if something goes wrong.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'd have to address that. We'd have to check with the people we lease from to make sure that I think in our lease it requires prior notification. But there would be safety issues that we'd want to run down in terms of, like I said earlier, the deer are creatures of habit, at least on our property, and they're using the same trails, and they're going to the same bedding and sleeping areas. So it would be a management thing, and I'd have to reach out to somebody like Troy and Jeff to maybe guide us through that. But at this point, we need to find a solution. With respect to the pet food, they don't have the same inspection requirement for pet food.
Don't know.
Okay.
I couldn't tell you.
Okay. Will Espero, who obviously a former lawmaker, is writing in. He says, we need to take this situation and turn it into a major economic opportunity for the state. The state and federal lawmakers passed laws that would allow Hawaii to take these wild animals, kill them, process them, and market the meat to the world as Hawaii access deer. We could also use the meat to feed those in need. What would it take, Yuki, to make something like that happen?
So again, going back to the earlier discussion, we need to figure out how to do the USDA requirements and make sure we take the steps for safety and food safety. So I hope Mr. Espero will help us figure out this, and we're going to work on it again during this legislative session. So I think there's solutions out there because other states have done it, and we just need to walk the right steps, and I think we will.
Jeff, we're talking about a lot of long-term solutions here, but in the short term, you said every 6 months, at the age of 6 months, these animals can start having babies. So in the very near term, what do you think is the best strategy forward?
We're going to keep using all the tools we've been using, which is fencing, control hunts, assisting landowners whenever we can. But it really is on the shoulders of folks who are out there hunting to do, as we said before, hunt like a predator. Everything that you see. If it comes down to, the natural instinct of a hunter is to say, no, I'm going to save that buck. I can't use that meat right now, or that doe. No, you have to kill that animal. And it's not just for the meat, and it's not just for food. It's for the protection of our watershed and our future for water. Because the one thing we haven't touched on here tonight yet is that this imperils our fresh water supply. Because when these animals, when their populations explode into the critical watersheds, which they're doing, we just got $8 million from the state for more fencing for our critical watersheds. That's our job. That's our primary job in Division of Forestry and Wildlife, is to create fresh water. That's why we were created with the first forestry division in the whole U.S. That's our primary job. But if we reach that point where they're moving up into these critical watersheds, we've lost the war. And then we lose our fresh water. So in the meantime, to answer your question, everybody's got to hunt like a predator, and when they hunt, they've got to remind themselves, I'm doing this for the future of my children's water.
I want to give you the last word tonight. What would you say to folks who are out there trying to figure out how we address this issue?
The main thing is give us access. Large landowners, we got to do something. They got to give us, we can talk about all this stuff all over the place. Talk is cheap, but we got to start squeezing the trigger, and we got to start letting go arrows, because if we don't start killing them, then they're going to get ahead of us. Mm-hmm. We just aren't doing enough. We need to start action.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. Mahalo to all of you for being here tonight. Of course, we do thank our guests, Troy Helmer, president of the Maui Hunters and Sportsmen Club, Jeff Bagshaw, communications and outreach specialist for the Division of Forestry and Wildlife of the DLNR, Jamie Woodburn, president of the Maui Olive Oil Company, and council member Yuki Sugimura, leader of the Axis Deer Task Force. Next week, right here on Insights, raising the minimum wage, $600 million for Hawaiian homelands, and the management of Mauna Kea are all issues lawmakers look to tackle this legislative session. So what passed and what didn't? Please do join us then. I'm Yanji Denise for Insights on PBS Hawaii. Aloha.